The gate was crowded. Families with backpacks, businessmen tapping their phones, toddlers whining about snacks. Nobody noticed the tension, at first. Not until the voice at the gate cracked sharp through the buzz. "Sir, I told you. You're not boarding this flight." The man standing in front of the desk blinked once. Calm. Confused. "Is there a reason?" The flight attendant, blonde, crisp uniform, badge tilted just so, crossed her arms. "Your attire does not meet boarding standards." He glanced down. Tailored slacks. Button-up shirt, tucked clean. Loafers polished enough to catch the overhead lights. "My attire?" She didn't blink. "Sir, step aside." He opened his mouth, not in anger, but in genuine confusion. "I'm traveling business class." "Not today, you're not." Then she did it. Grabbed his carry-on from beside him. Tossed it, not placed, into the corner behind the counter. It hit the floor with a heavy slap. People turned. Murmurs. A woman in line covered her mouth. A little boy asked too loudly, "Why is she mad at that man?" No one answered. The man just stood there, hands still at his sides, voice still calm. "I'd like to speak to a supervisor." The flight attendant smiled, tight, patronizing. "You can do that after you rebook, if they let you." And then she turned away, dismissed him, like he was luggage, like he was less than the floor she walked on. Nobody knew, in that moment, that the man she just humiliated wasn't just a passenger, wasn't just a customer. He was the largest private investor in the entire airline. And by the time the day ended, he wouldn't be standing at her gate. He would be tearing apart the ground she stood on. Like if you've ever seen dignity mistaken for weakness. Comment if silence once said more than shouting ever could. Share this with someone who knows the real weight of a still moment. He doesn't wake up to an alarm. Never needed one. His body knows the rhythm. Up at 5:30 a.m. Stretch. Sit. Breathe. Feet flat on the floor before he even opens his eyes fully. Another day. Same stillness. His name is Adrian Cole. 46 years old. Investor. Strategist. Son of a woman who worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on. Grandson of a man who wasn't allowed to own land but taught himself to anyway. He carries all of that history, not on his sleeve, but in his spine. His mornings are simple. Coffee black. Oatmeal with a little honey. Financial news muted on the television. Not because he doesn't care about the market, but because he's learned that real danger doesn't announce itself with breaking news. It moves quietly. In boardrooms. In hallways. At airport gates. He dresses the same every day too. Tailored slacks. Button-down shirt. A watch that cost more than some people's first car. Understated. No diamonds. Clean. Professional. Unassuming. He learned young. If you're black and successful, dress so they doubt their assumptions, but not enough to challenge their authority. An exhausting dance. But he's good at it. Adrian's driver arrives at 6:30 sharp. No horn. Just a text. Here. He steps out into the early morning mist. Neighbors nod at him, polite, but distant. He nods back. Not too wide. Not too friendly. Just enough. Always just enough. The drive to the airport is quiet. The driver, an older man named Samuel, knows better than to fill the ride with chatter. Only once does he speak. "You off to New York again, Mr. Cole?" "Just for the day. Meetings." Samuel nods. No need for more. At the private terminal, staff greet Adrian by name. "Good morning, Mr. Cole." "Welcome back, Mr. Cole." They smile. He smiles back. Not because he trusts it, because he knows the game. The commercial terminal, however, is different. Here, he becomes one of many. And when you're a black man in business attire, carrying only a briefcase and wearing calm like armor, you're either invisible or a threat. Sometimes both at once. He moves through security. Hands placed just so. Belt already off. Shoes already unlaced. No sudden movements. No raised voice. Even when they randomly select him for screening. He smiles. They pat him down. They find nothing. They always find nothing. And still, he thanks them. Because he was raised to survive, not to win arguments in public. At the coffee shop near gate 43, the barista hesitates when he orders. looks past him for a second, checks if he's really paying for the premium roast. He slides his card over. No hesitation, no sigh, just another small tax for existing. Boarding time. Group 1. He steps up, ticket ready, suitcase by his side, and that's when he meets her. The flight attendant. Blonde bun, sharp uniform, smile like a blade. She doesn't greet him, doesn't look at his name on the boarding pass, only at his skin, his watch, his stillness, and decides, not that he doesn't belong, but that she can act like he doesn't, without consequence, because the world has taught her that lesson too. The rest you know, or you will. But right now, Adrian stands at the gate, waiting, breathing, still. Not because he wants to be patient, because he's had to be patient since before he could spell the word. Back home, in his office, there's a framed quote from his grandfather, carved into wood, worn at the edges. They can't steal what you don't hand them. He reads it every morning before he leaves the house. It's why he doesn't hand them anger, doesn't hand them fear, doesn't hand them shame. Only silence, only dignity, even when they spit it back at him. Even when they toss his belongings like trash, even when they tell him, with words and without, that his place is not inside, but outside. Still, he breathes, he waits, he watches, because he knows. The real victory isn't shouting when they shut the door. It's owning the whole damn building when they think you're still knocking. The gate agent announced final boarding for Flight 228 to New York. Passengers shuffled forward, clutching backpacks, adjusting jackets, checking phones. Adrian waited his turn. Not impatient, not eager, just there. Still, when his group was called, first class, business elite, he stepped forward, ticket in hand, carry-on trailing smoothly behind him. He approached the scanner. The flight attendant was already frowning. Boarding pass, sir. Her voice clipped. Professional, but only technically. He handed it over. She didn't scan it. She just stared at it, then stared at him, then back at it. A beat too long. Sir, can you step aside, please? He blinked. Is there a problem? Your attire isn't compliant with our premium cabin policy. He looked down. Pressed slacks, iron shirt, loafers shining under fluorescent lights. Not a hoodie, not ripped jeans. Professional, even by their standards. What about my attire is non-compliant? He asked level. She didn't answer directly. She waved at the next person in line to come forward. A man in cargo shorts and a stained polo shirt barreled past. No problem. No questions. No hesitation. Adrian stepped aside. He stood to the side, watching the line move. One by one, people boarded. Nobody looked at him, not directly, but some stole glances. Some pretended they didn't hear. Some shifted uncomfortably. Because they knew. On some level, they always knew. He approached the counter again. I'm traveling on a confirmed business class ticket. Is there a supervisor I can speak to? The attendant's smile tightened. Security can assist you if you're refusing to comply. Comply with what? Sir, step back. Another agent appeared. Not uniformed security. Not law enforcement. Just another worker. She looked at Adrian. Then at the flight attendant. Something passed across her face, quick. Recognition. Discomfort. But she said nothing. Only nodded at the attendant's direction. Adrian felt it. The shift. Not just inconvenience. Not just annoyance. Erasure. Like he was a problem to be removed. Not a customer to be served. And then it got worse. She grabbed his carry-on, without asking, and hurled it behind the counter. The suitcase hit the tile with a dull, ugly thud. The handle cracked. A wheel popped off. Several passengers gasped. A little girl clutched her mother's hand tighter. Someone took out a phone, half raising it, then thinking better, putting it back down. Adrian stayed still. 1 second, 2, then slowly, he stepped back from the counter. The flight attendant didn't flinch, didn't apologize, just barked, "Next, please." As if he were furniture. A spill, an inconvenience to mop up. And for the first time that morning, the buzz in the terminal shifted. Not loud, but not invisible. A couple near the window whispered, A businessman typing on his laptop stopped mid-keystroke. The energy in the air thickened, because even if they wouldn't say it aloud, they knew something ugly had happened, and they had seen it. Adrian knelt quietly to pick up his bag. The cracked wool scraped against the floor. He lifted it carefully, dusted it off, straightened, breath steady, face composed. He didn't yell, didn't curse, didn't plead. He pulled out his phone, opened his contacts, found the name he needed, pressed call, held it to his ear. A few rings. Then, "Mr. Cole, everything all right?" "No. Tell me what you need." Adrian spoke quietly, matter of fact. No anger, no drama, just the truth. About what had happened, about who had witnessed it, about the treatment he'd received, and who had delivered it. The man on the other end, CEO of the airline, the one whose children Adrian had met at charity galas, the one who called Adrian family in shareholder meetings, went quiet, dead quiet. Then, "I'm so sorry." Adrian said nothing. Let the silence do the work. Then, "I'll be withdrawing my position, effective immediately." The CEO exhaled like he'd been punched. "Adrian, goodbye." Click. No threats, no shouting, just a decision, a quiet movement with the force of an earthquake. Adrian picked up his broken suitcase, turned, walked out of the terminal. No glances back, no parting words. He didn't need to see the collapse. He would feel it soon enough. Behind him, the gate agent watched. Her smile faltered, not because she understood yet, but because somewhere deep inside, where instinct overrides arrogance, she knew. She had made a mistake she could not talk her way out of. The conference room smelled like fear. Not sweat, not coffee. Fear, the kind that seeps into the carpet and clings to the blinds. It was supposed to be a normal Monday. Strategy review at 9. Financial forecast at 11. Lunch and learn at 1. Instead, at 8:17 a.m., every senior executive at Horizon Airlines was pulled into an urgent leadership meeting. No agenda, no explanation, just a location and a time. Now. By 8:30, they were all seated. Board members, department heads, legal counsel, PR officers, even the CFO, who hadn't set foot in a room that early in years, was there, still chewing breath mints. At the head of the table stood Mark Whitaker, CEO. Usually, Mark was all charm, easy laughs, button blazers. Today, no blazer, tie loosened, eyes bloodshot, face gray. He didn't waste time. Adrian Cole has pulled his entire investment. No warm-up, no context, just the axe falling. The room sucked in air. Not loud, just sharp enough to cut. The CFO spoke first, trying stupidly to minimize. "Okay, we can recover. I mean it's..." Mark cut him off. $5 billion. $5 billion. Not spread over years. Not pending conditions. Pulled. Effective immediately. Someone at the back coughed. Someone else cursed under their breath. "How?" The head of PR whispered. "Why?" Mark didn't answer immediately. He paced, knuckles white around a printout he hadn't let go of since 6 a.m. Finally, he threw it on the table. A still frame from the airport security feed. Grainy but unmistakable. The flight attendant. The gate. Adrian standing there. His bag on the floor, cracked open. Frozen humiliation. "This," Mark said. "This is how." The head of HR flinched. We have protocols. Sensitivity training. I don't understand." "Training doesn't matter," Mark snapped. "Not when perception already decided." Someone else muttered. "Who's responsible?" Everyone knew. They just didn't want to say it first. The name felt radioactive. Finally, someone murmured. Jessica Hart. The flight attendant. Mid-level seniority. No prior complaints. Good record on paper. None of that mattered now. Mark leaned on the table, both palms flat. She made a judgment call. She embarrassed the wrong man. And now we all bleed for it. The PR director whispered. "We can apologize. Issue a statement. Offer a settlement." Mark laughed once. Short, bitter. "You think Adrian Cole wants a settlement?" Silence. Because they knew. He didn't want money. He already had money. He wanted them to feel it. And they would. The CFO's phone buzzed on the table. He checked. Blanched. Stock's down 8% since opening. 8%. In less than 30 minutes. Legal spoke up, trying to contain the bleeding. Maybe if we suspend her? Publicly distance. Fire her, Mark said flatly. Effective when? 5 minutes ago. He turned to the head of HR. Walk her out. No appeal. No PR spin. But, no buts. She's already gone. She just doesn't know it yet. Across the city, Jessica Hart was pouring her second cup of coffee when her phone rang. Caller ID, private number. She smiled. Probably scheduling. Probably an upgrade. She answered brightly. Hello, this is Jessica. The voice on the other end was cold. Corporate. Final. Jessica Hart, this is Horizon Airlines Corporate Security. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. A courier is on the way to retrieve your badge and company property. Wait, what? Check your email for details. Goodbye. Click. No explanation. No second chances. No appeal. At the airport, her co-workers watched as she was escorted out. No one spoke. No one helped. Some nodded grimly. Some looked away. Because they knew, too. Back in the boardroom, Mark closed the meeting with one sentence. Actions have consequences. Ours. Hers. Yours. Then he left. Didn't wait for questions. Didn't wait for excuses. Just left. As executives filed out, whispers filled the hallway. Adrian Cole. Did you know? How could she not know? He funded the entire expansion. He built the damn premium program. Everyone knew his name now. Everyone. Not because Adrian shouted it. Not because he demanded it. But because he stood still. While the world around him proved everything he had ever suspected. And now, his absence echoed louder than their loyalty ever had. The ghost in the room wasn't rage. It was recognition. And it was going to haunt them for a long, long time. Miles worked the early shift at Terminal C. Bags. Strollers. Complaints about coffee prices. The usual noise of travel and hurry. He wasn't a gate agent. Not a flight attendant. Just a runner, official title, ground operations assistant. If you lost your bag, Miles found it. If you missed your flight, Miles radioed the next desk. Invisible work. Forgettable. Exactly the kind of job nobody notices until something goes wrong. He saw it happen. The morning it all started. He was 10 steps from Gate 43, delivering a maintenance request for a broken jet bridge. He saw the black man calm, composed, handing over his boarding pass. Saw the flight attendant. Saw the moment she decided. He didn't hear the words, but he saw everything else. The way her mouth tightened. The way she moved his suitcase, like it offended her to touch it. The way people nearby shifted, not loudly, but enough. He watched the man pick up his broken suitcase. Saw him leave without raising his voice. And he thought, that looked wrong. But he didn't step in. He wasn't stupid. Wasn't about to risk his job over something that wasn't technically his responsibility. That's what he told himself. And for a while it worked. Until the emails started. The news alerts. The internal memos. The mandatory all-staff meeting. Until the whisper turned into a roar. $5 billion. Investor gone. Shares plummeting. Gate 43. Jessica Hart. Miles sat in the back of the staff meeting room, fidgeted with the hem of his uniform polo, listened as the station manager stammered through half-truths. We must maintain the highest standards of customer service. Respect and professionalism must be extended to all passengers. Incidents like this are not who we are. Miles wanted to laugh, not because it was funny, because he realized he was part of the we. And he hadn't done anything either. That night, he couldn't sleep. Not because he was worried about layoffs, though they were coming, but because he couldn't stop replaying the man's face. Not angry, not desperate, just disappointed, like he'd seen it all before, and expected better anyway. A few days later, Miles passed by Gate 43 again. It looked the same. Same linoleum, same plastic chairs, same smell of old coffee and recirculated air. But it felt different. Like the floorboards remembered. He found himself stopping at the window, staring out at the tarmac, wondering, how many times had something like that happened? How many times had he walked past it? How many chances had he had to be more than background? Too many. He started small, holding the door open longer than necessary, asking if elderly passengers needed help, even when they didn't ask first, making eye contact with people who looked like they were expecting to be ignored. Tiny things. Insignificant, maybe. But to Miles, it was movement. It was choosing to be a witness, out loud, not just silently. One morning, he saw an older black woman struggling with a carry-on almost as big as she was. No one moved to help. Miles crossed the concourse in 3 strides. "Can I get that for you, ma'am?" She hesitated, like she was weighing whether he meant it, then nodded. "Thank you, baby." He carried her bag to the counter, waited until she had her boarding pass in hand, nodded once. No big fuss. She smiled wider than he expected, and he thought, maybe it starts this small. Later, at lunch, a co-worker teased him. "Dude, what's with the hero complex?" Miles shrugged, didn't argue, because it wasn't about being a hero. It was about not being a ghost in the room. Not anymore. Meanwhile, rumors flew around the airport. Jessica Hart had lawyered up, filed for wrongful termination, was threatening to tell her side. Some employees felt bad for her. Miles didn't. He knew the truth. He'd seen it with his own eyes. She hadn't been punished for a bad day. She'd been punished for thinking the world wouldn't notice what she did. And for once, the world had noticed. At the end of the week, a small plaque appeared near Gate 43. No announcement, no ribbon cutting, just a quiet addition. It read, "In honor of all travelers, seen and unseen, dignity is not granted by boarding passes. It is carried by those who walk." No names, no dates, but Miles knew who it was for, and who it was because of. He stopped by it on his next shift, ran his fingers lightly across the engraving. Then, for the first time in a long time, he stood a little straighter when he helped the next customer. Not because anyone was watching, because he was. It didn't happen all at once. At first, it was just numbers. Horizon Airline's stock dropped another 4% by Tuesday afternoon. Shareholders panicked. Analysts speculated. The headlines came slower. Investor Adrian Cole pulls $5 billion investment from Horizon. Boardroom in crisis. Horizon faces questions over discrimination incident. Can Horizon recover from the loss of its largest private backer? By Wednesday, passengers began canceling flights. Not loudly, not with hashtags, just quietly. Bookings dropped. Corporate partners hesitated. Travel agencies flagged Horizon flights with a caution symbol. Pending review. The ripple was turning into a current. Inside Horizon headquarters, it was chaos. Emergency meetings, frantic emails, long nights with short tempers. Mark Whitaker, the CEO, moved like a man underwater. Slow, heavy, burdened. He met with PR teams. "Spin it," he ordered. They tried. God, they tried. They issued statements. "We value diversity. We are investigating. This is not reflective of our values." But nobody bought it, because the image was burned too deep. A man standing silent at the gate. A suitcase broken on the floor. A company pretending not to notice. You can't unsee a wound once you've seen it, especially when it's inflicted with a smile. News crews camped outside Horizon's corporate offices. Customers posted TikToks. "Why I canceled my Horizon flight. What dignity means more than a frequent flyer mile." Employees whispered in break rooms. "Did you hear? 3 more execs resigned. My friend at legal says 2 class action suits are brewing." The collapse was no longer theoretical. It was happening. And the worst part, there was no villain to scapegoat anymore. Jessica Hart was already gone. The gate staff had been retrained. New respect posters hung in every terminal. But the rot wasn't in a person. It was in the silence that let it happen. And no HR seminar could scrub that out. Meanwhile, Adrian Cole stayed silent. No interviews, no op-eds. He simply moved his capital elsewhere, to an airline whose CEO had called him personally. No apology, Just 2 words. We see you. And that was enough. The Horizon board tried to hold emergency meetings with him, tried to arrange settlement talks, tried to beg. He declined. Politely. Formally. Finally. And in that finality, they felt the full weight of what had landed. Not just a loss of money, a loss of face, of standing, of reputation. A reminder that respect isn't something you offer after the damage. It's what keeps the walls standing in the first place. At one particularly desperate board meeting, a senior member, a woman who had once shaken Adrian's hand at a charity gala, said, "How could one moment cause this much damage?" Mark answered, quiet, flat, because it wasn't one moment. It was the moment we showed who we really are, and someone important enough saw it. And there was no fixing that, no spinning it, no buying it back. By Friday, Horizon Airline stock was down 28%. Credit agencies issued warnings. The media dubbed it the $5 billion silence. And every time the headline ran, every time the story got retweeted, the image ran with it. The man at the gate, calm, still, watching the company tear itself apart, without ever raising his voice. In airports across the country, travelers chose other airlines. Some said it out loud at counters. Most didn't. Most just clicked different boxes online. A slow, cold severance. Harder to see. Harder to fix. And still, Adrian Cole said nothing. Because he didn't need to. The damage was already written into the walls. Back at the airport, Miles, the ground assistant who had witnessed it all, started noticing things too. Flight crews speaking more carefully. Agents offering help without waiting to be asked. Passengers of color getting real smiles, not tight ones. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a revolution, but it was something. Because sometimes, the only real reform comes after you realize you're not untouchable anymore. Jessica Hart, meanwhile, filed a wrongful termination lawsuit. It went nowhere. Horizon's lawyers quietly settled for a figure low enough to be humiliating, high enough to be confidential. She moved back to her parents' house 2 states away, and found that the world wasn't very interested in her side of the story. Because once you show people who you are, they remember. Mark Whitaker would resign 6 months later, citing health reasons. Everyone knew the truth. No amount of fundraising could save a brand that had burned its own name. As for Adrian Cole, he boarded another flight a week later. Different airline, different gate, same stillness. He wore the same style, same polished shoes, same steady walk. And this time, when he handed over his boarding pass, the agent looked him in the eye. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Cole." No hesitation, no second guessing, just respect, earned long ago. Finally, recognized. He nodded once, stepped onto the plane, and didn't look back. Because he didn't need to. He had already written his answer into the ground they walked on, and left it there, for them to trip over, for the rest of their lives. Connor Jacobs never planned to stay at Horizon Airlines forever. At 26, he saw the job for what it was. A paycheck, a stepping stone, a place to figure out what he really wanted. He started on baggage, moved to gate operations, finally landed in customer relations. The job wasn't bad. Smile, scan, apologize, pretend like you didn't hear the muttered comments about delays, about luggage fees, about lines too long and seats too small. Most days, Connor moved through the hours like a ghost. Not malicious, just detached. It was easier that way. Easier not to see the things you couldn't fix. Until gate 43. Until the video. Until the crash. Connor hadn't seen it happen in person, but he felt the aftermath. Like everyone else. The way supervisors barked tighter. The way passengers eyed staff differently. The way posters about respect bloomed overnight like weeds. But what stuck with him wasn't the emails, or the training modules, or the PR spin. It was the man's face. Still, quiet, refusing to shrink, and the knowledge that someone had looked at that dignity and decided it wasn't enough to deserve basic respect. That gnawed at Connor, quietly, persistently, until it changed something. It happened 2 weeks later. Gate 29. A mother traveling alone with 2 kids. Black, exhausted. Her youngest clung to her knee, while she juggled boarding passes, a diaper bag, and a car seat too big for the conveyor. The gate agent ahead of Connor sighed loudly. Next. Impatient. Dismissive. Connor saw the woman flinch. He saw other passengers roll their eyes. Saw the familiar signs. You're a burden. You're an inconvenience. You don't belong here unless you're neat, quiet, easy. Something in him moved. Before he could think about it, he stepped forward. Ma'am, he said quietly. Let me help you. He lifted the car seat onto the belt. Printed fresh boarding passes, so she didn't have to dig through her bag. Kneeled to talk to the boy, handing him a set of plastic wings from his pocket. The mother blinked. Not used to it. Not trusting it at first. But then her shoulders softened. A little. Thank you, she whispered. Connor smiled. Not big. Not performative. Just enough. You're welcome. The line behind them didn't groan. They waited. Maybe confused. Maybe annoyed. Maybe something else. Connor didn't care. After she boarded, the other agent muttered, You're gonna get soft doing that. Connor shrugged. Maybe. He didn't argue. Didn't fight. Just went back to his station. But inside, he felt something settle. Later that night, he thought about Adrian Cole again. Not his name. Not the money he pulled. Not the headlines. Just the stillness. The way standing silent was louder than shouting. The way refusing to shrink had changed everything. Connor knew his small action wasn't going to heal the company. Wasn't going to undo what happened at Gate 43. But maybe it meant one less moment where someone felt erased. Maybe it meant one less kid learning too young that dignity had to be earned in places where others took it for granted. Maybe it mattered, even if nobody noticed. The next morning, Connor printed a small sign, taped it to the inside of his gate podium. Hidden. Private. Just for him. It read, Move like somebody's dignity depends on it. Because it does. He didn't tell anyone about it. He didn't need to. It wasn't for applause. It was for the next moment that tested him. The next opportunity to choose. And somehow, choosing once, made it easier to choose again. A week later, it happened again. A teenage boy in a worn jacket, traveling alone, looking lost at the boarding zone. The agent next to Connor waved him off impatiently. Connor stepped in. Hey man, first time flying? The boy nodded, eyes wide. Connor smiled. Stick with me. We'll get you there. And they did. No drama. No applause. Just a quiet moment of making sure someone didn't feel invisible. Months later, when the media had moved on, when Horizon's logo faded a little in shame, Connor still kept a sign taped inside his podium. It got wrinkled, faded, but he left it there, as a reminder of what silence could destroy, of what small decisions could build. Sometimes passengers noticed. Not many. A few. A man nodded at him once after boarding. A woman smiled a little longer than usual. No words. No thanks. Just a feeling. And Connor thought, maybe that's enough. Back at home, he told his roommate once, I don't think I'm saving the world. The roommate, a nurse, shrugged. Most people aren't, but you save one person from feeling like crap on a long day. That counts. Connor thought about that. Maybe it wasn't about saving anything. Maybe it was just about showing up. When it counted, Jessica Hart would never know his name. Adrian Cole would never hear about him. The passengers who crossed his gate would forget him by the next terminal. And that was fine, because the point wasn't being remembered. The point was remembering others. The next time a storm delayed flights and everyone snapped and cursed and rolled eyes, Connor stood a little taller behind his podium, breathed a little deeper, moved like somebody's dignity depended on it. Because it did. Because it always had. The first shift was barely noticeable. A longer pause before a brusque word. A second glance at someone they would have ignored. A subtle straightening of the shoulders. Tiny. Almost imperceptible. But real. It started with the ground crews. People like Miles, who had seen it happen. People like Connor, who had chosen differently afterward. They didn't hold meetings. They didn't post mission statements. They just moved differently. Slower when helping passengers struggling with bags. Gentler when explaining delays. More deliberate in their eye contact. especially with the faces they'd once been trained, implicitly, to hurry past. At gate 17, an elderly couple struggled with a boarding pass app that wouldn't load. The agent on duty, Maria, usually impatient with tech issues, stepped around the counter, helped them scan manually. No sighs, no rolling eyes, just patience. She didn't think about Adrian Cole, didn't know his name, but something from the ripples still touched her hands when she moved. At the security checkpoint, TSA officers, long infamous for their coldness, paused slightly longer when checking IDs. Looked up, met eyes. Not every time, not perfectly, but more than before. And passengers felt it. The difference between being processed and being seen. In the break rooms, conversations shifted too. Where once gossip about problem passengers filled the air, now there was more caution. Less laughter at someone's expense. Not because they were scared, because somewhere deep down, they realized, we could be the next headline. But even deeper, some realized something harder. We should have cared before the headlines. At one staff meeting, a veteran gate agent named Darren, 20 years in, spoke up unexpectedly. During a session about customer sensitivity, he raised his hand. Maybe it's not just about how we react to complaints. Maybe it's about how we treat people before they even have to complain. The room went still. Not hostile, just surprised. Because Darren wasn't the woke type, wasn't the sensitive type. But he'd seen what happened. He'd seen what silence cost them. And something in him refused to pay that price again. At Horizon's executive level, things shifted too. Not because of conscience, because of consequence. Internal promotions started to include real diversity checks, not just boxes ticked. Training modules updated, not with glossy slogans, but with footage of Gate 43. Unedited, uncomfortable, required viewing. And slowly, painfully, the message sank in. This isn't about optics. It's about survival. Because the world had stopped forgiving what it once excused. And the cost was too high to pretend otherwise. Meanwhile, passengers noticed too. Not all, but enough. A woman traveling alone with her son was helped faster. A black businessman was offered assistance with overhead storage, without condescension. An older immigrant woman, struggling with English, was guided kindly through the rebooking process. Small things, tiny moments, but stacked together, they changed the air, made the space feel different, safer, wider, more possible. One afternoon, Miles found himself at the lost baggage counter, helping an angry young man whose luggage had gone missing. The man paced, swore under his breath. Miles stayed calm, apologized sincerely, offered water, helped fill out forms. 20 minutes later, the man exhaled sharply. Sorry, man. Long trip. Bad day. Miles nodded. We all have him. The man grinned tiredly. Yeah, but you made it suck less. He tapped the counter once in thanks and left. And Miles stood a little taller after that. At the coffee shop inside the terminal, the baristas added a new drink special. Named it after a passenger no one dared forget. They didn't call it Adrian's Brew, or anything obvious. Just a simple sign. Stillness blend. Smooth. Strong. Unshakable. A nod only some understood. But enough. Outside the terminal, a mural appeared on a service wall. An artist, unofficial, unpaid, painted a simple image. A silhouette of a man standing calmly at a boarding gate. Suitcase beside him. No shouting. No fists. Just presence. Below it, one line. Respect is not earned by shouting. It is lost by silence. Airport officials debated painting over it. Ultimately, they left it. Too risky to erase now. Too true to deny. Inside, life moved on. Flights boarded. Planes took off. Bags rolled. The system kept humming. But something fundamental had shifted. Something that wouldn't show up on quarterly reports. Wouldn't be captured in safety audits. But lived in the extra seconds people gave each other. The small decencies people offered without being asked. The way silence had taught them something shouting never could. In one quiet corner, near a seldom-used gate, someone posted a photo. No caption. No explanation. Just a picture. A man in a suit. Standing still. Looking forward. Waiting. Passengers passing by sometimes stopped, looked, felt something tighten in their chest, something they couldn't quite name, then moved on, but a little differently, a little heavier, a little clearer. Connor still kept his sign taped inside his gate podium. Faded now, corners curled, but every morning he smoothed it flat. Read it once before logging into the system. Move like somebody's dignity depends on it. Because it still did. Because it always would. It's funny how stories travel. Not like news reports. Not like viral clips. Real stories move differently. Soft. Sideways. Slipping into places they were never supposed to reach. 2 months after the incident at Gate 43, a woman boarded a flight in Denver. Middle seat. Middle row. Nothing special, except a man sitting by the window wore a small lapel pin, a silhouette of a man standing tall with a suitcase at his side. She recognized it, had seen it online, had read the story, the one about the investor who stayed silent while an airline burned itself down. She asked about the pin. The man smiled. "It's from my company," he said. "We started a mentorship program because of him." He didn't say the name. He didn't need to. The story was bigger than that now. In a classroom in Philadelphia, a high school teacher told the story too. Simplified. No corporate names. No lawsuits. Just the heart of it. A man was treated like less because of how he looked. He didn't shout. He didn't fight. He stood still. And the world saw who needed to be ashamed. The students listened. Not bored. Not distracted. Listening. Because some of them had fathers who taught them to be twice as careful. Mothers who stitched pride into their jackets before sending them out the door. They understood. More than they could say. One student, a shy boy named Jamal, stayed after class. Asked quietly, "Did it change anything?" The teacher smiled. Soft. Said, "Maybe not the whole world, but enough of it." Jamal nodded. Tucked the lesson away like a stone in his pocket. Something to carry. Something to remember. In a church in Atlanta, a pastor referenced the story during a sermon. Not for outrage. Not for drama. Just to remind his congregation. Sometimes the holiest thing you can do is refuse to be moved. Not by hate. Not by injustice. Not by the temptation to rage. He paused. Let it settle. Stillness is a kind of prayer too. And the room, usually lively, went silent. Not heavy, not scared, reverent. In a small airport cafe in Seattle, a mural appeared. A simple painting. A man in a pressed shirt, standing tall, suitcase at his side. Beneath it, dignity doesn't demand attention. It commands it. No artist signature. No sponsor. Just there. Waiting. And in Houston, where it all began, Miles, the ground crew runner, saw a little boy tug his mother's hand in the terminal. Pointing at the plaque near Gate 43. The mother knelt down. Read it to him. In honor of all travelers, seen and unseen. Dignity is not granted by boarding passes. It is carried by those who walk. The boy frowned. What's dignity? She thought for a moment, then said, It's when you know you matter, even if other people forget. The boy nodded like he understood. And maybe, somehow, he did. Meanwhile, at Horizon Airlines, the scars remained. New slogans, new training, new PR. But the walls remembered, the staff remembered, the market remembered. And maybe, just maybe, they moved differently now. Not because they were saints, because they learned the cost of forgetting. As for Adrian Cole, he lived his life quietly, built new ventures, funded scholarships, sat on boards that actually listened. Never gave interviews. Never wrote a memoir. He didn't need to. The ripple carried without him pushing it. Without him even being there. Because once a story embeds itself deep enough, it doesn't need a narrator anymore. It lives. Sometimes, when he traveled, Adrian would catch glimpses of it. A plaque. A mural. A slogan on a coffee cup. Small things. Not grand monuments, but acknowledgments. Winks from the world that once pretended not to see him, now unable to pretend any longer. He smiled when he saw them, not out of pride, out of knowing that sometimes you don't change the world by conquering it. Sometimes you change it by refusing to be erased. In a tiny bookstore in New Orleans, a handwritten note was taped to the checkout counter. It read, "You are not invisible here. We are watching the right way." No one could explain who wrote it, but it stayed, and customers touched it like a blessing as they paid. In Chicago, a cab driver kept a printed photo on his dashboard, a still from a security cam. A man in a suit, standing silent, suitcase at his feet. When passengers asked, he just said, "That man reminded the world that some fights are won by standing still." The ripple reached places Adrian never set foot in, changed conversations he never heard, softened hearts he never met. And it all started not with a shout, not with a battle, but with a moment, a decision, a refusal to accept erasure. The world shifted, not loudly, not all at once, but permanently, because dignity, once recognized, has a way of seeping into the soil, growing in cracks nobody thought could hold life. It wasn't a revolution. It was quieter than that, stronger than that. It was a memory that refused to die, a truth too heavy to bury, a stillness that still moved. Adrian Cole sat in the small airport cafe, not the big city terminal, not the private lounges, just a regular gateside cafe. Plastic tables, cheap drip coffee, the scent of burnt bagels lingering in the air. Ordinary, exactly what he wanted. He sipped his coffee. No rush, no meetings to catch, no crisis looming, just him, a window, and a departure board that clicked quietly overhead. He wore no watch today, no tailored suit, just jeans, a soft, worn jacket, and a quiet smile he didn't bother to hide anymore. The world could read whatever it wanted into his silence. He was done translating it. Around him, life moved. A family wrangled toddlers into strollers. A businesswoman muttered into a Bluetooth headset. A young man scrolled endlessly through his phone. No one bothered him. No one asked if he belonged. They just let him be. He noticed the small things. A gate agent kneeling to help an elderly man with his boarding pass. A security officer offering a nervous teenager a reassuring nod. A pilot, white-haired, brisk, tipping his hat to a janitor sweeping gum off the floor. Tiny gestures, quiet course corrections, signs that somewhere along the line, the ripple had reached here too. Adrian smiled again. Not for anyone, just for himself. His flight was delayed. He didn't mind. He watched raindrops race each other down the window pane. Watched reflections blur and sharpen as people hurried past. Watched the world prove, in 100 small ways, that it could change after all. He pulled out a notebook. Not his work journal. Not a ledger. Just a cheap spiral-bound thing he picked up from a drugstore. Open to a blank page. At the top, he wrote, "Stillness is movement too." And under that, they saw. And I stayed. And it mattered. He set the notebook aside, sipped his coffee, waited. Content. At the gate next to him, a boarding call crackled over the speaker. Group A. First class. Passengers formed a loose line. An older woman in a bright yellow raincoat struggled with her bags. Adrian stood up, walked over. "Let me get that for you." She looked up, startled, then smiled. Wide, grateful. "Thank you, young man." Young man. He chuckled under his breath. It had been a long time since he was called that. "Of course, ma'am." He lifted her bag easily, settled it onto her shoulder properly. Stepped back. No grand gestures. No expectation. Just presence. A gate agent nearby caught his eye. Nodded. Sincere. Not performative. Adrian nodded back and sat down again. The rain kept falling. Flights kept delaying. Life kept happening. But something underneath it all felt different now. Like the ground itself had shifted slightly. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough to notice if you were paying attention. His flight was finally called. He rose, carried his small bag, moved toward the gate. The agent scanned his boarding pass, paused, looked up, really looked. "Safe travels, sir." Simple, genuine. Adrian nodded. "Thank you," and boarded. As he walked down the jet bridge, he caught a glimpse of the mural painted along the wall. Small, almost hidden. A silhouette. A man with a suitcase. Still, solid. And beneath it the words, Dignity is movement too. He smiled, kept walking. Inside the plane, he found his seat. Window again. Always the window. Not to look out, but to remember how far he'd come. How far the world had come. And how far it still had to go. He sat, buckled his belt, folded his hands, closed his eyes for a moment, breathed, the way he always had. Somewhere out there, beyond the tarmac and the rain and the heavy clouds, the world kept spinning. People kept forgetting, and remembering, and forgetting again. But some would remember for good, because sometimes a stillness is too heavy to be carried away by noise. Sometimes a moment outlasts the shouting. The engines roared to life. The plane rumbled forward. Adrian opened his eyes, watched the runway blur past, watched the city shrink into dots of gold, watched the sky open, patient and wide, and he thought, maybe stillness isn't about standing still after all. Maybe it's about moving so deeply that the world has no choice but to feel you even after you're gone. He smiled once more, closed his notebook, and let the world catch up. Final image. Rain against the plane window. A man sitting still, not waiting for permission, not asking for acknowledgement, just existing, fully, unapologetically. And the world, finally, learning how to see him.